Former Ravens safety Tony Jefferson, who did 2 stops in Baltimore for a total of 4 seasons, announced his retirement from the NFL after 9 years. He played last year under Don Martindale's defense with the Giants. Jefferson was with the Ravens as a highly sought-after free agent 2017 through 19, and then back again for 4 games in 2021. Jefferson is coming back to the Ravens this summer for a 3rd time, this time as a scout. The current Ravens are getting close to wrapping up their first week of voluntary OTA workouts, where for the first time in more than 12 months, it is only about football in Owings Mills. No more contract drama or skipped organized team activities for Lamar Jackson. The Ravens have their QB1 in-house, committed to his 6th season and beyond with the Ravens, with his #1 focus, learning and executing this new offense under Todd Monken, one that has him excited. Jackson gets a chance to ditch his legs for his arm.
You know, less running and more throwing, I say. You know, I hear a lot of noise about throwing and stuff like this, yards to achieve and stuff, but I'm not really worried about the yards as much. It's about us just winning. Running can only take you so far, you know, and I feel like with this new era of teams and offenses in the league, I feel like we need that, and Coach Todd Monken, Coach, like, basically just giving us the keys to the offense, really. And like I said, I'm loving it.
Next season in 2024, the Premier Lacrosse League will assign its teams to home cities. Johns Hopkins graduate, Maryland native, and co-founder Paul Rabel made the announcement today. The 8-team league will still use a touring style, but play in one city over a 2-day weekend, with the home team getting a doubleheader. The PLL will pick its cities later this year. Right now, the league is touring 14 cities this season, including Baltimore, on August 5th and 6th.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 6, new surveillance video from Baltimore police, why they're investigating this person of interest. And more than 1,000 pairs of shoes go unaccounted for in West Virginia, where they were found and how police are hoping to return them to their rightful owners.
Baltimore's youth curfew begins tomorrow, but what is it going to cost? Fox 45 News digs into the numbers and the effect the plan will have on taxpayers. The head of the state's Department of Juvenile Services facing questions over an op-ed he wrote 8 years ago. His response in a Fox 45 News exclusive interview. And Johns Hopkins graduates getting quite the surprise at look at who the university picked as its commencement speaker.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 6.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala. Thank you for staying with us. Tonight, we continue our coverage on the youth violence crisis in Baltimore as more details come out about how Mayor Brandon Scott's new youth curfew will work. Concerns are growing on just how effective it will be. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker is digging into how much the plan will cost and the potential risk to taxpayers.
Skepticism surrounding the city's new youth curfew plan is coming from all angles.
It's unbelievably poorly thought out.
It's not going to work because
Look, the
kids
young people
don't
are
want
going
to go
to
those
events.
places.
Well, no.
Even city council members expressing concern it simply won't work.
I want this to work, but I still see these young people not obeying.
This is not a tool that's going to make the Baltimore city safer. This is not a tool that's going to go against the young folks who are intentionally creating unproductive activity at night. So I mean, I think we just have to accept that and literally move on.
The youth curfew goes into effect tomorrow. Those under 14 need to be off the streets by 9 p.m. and youth from 14 to 17 can stay out until 11 on the weekends, 10 o'clock otherwise. Youth will be asked to leave on their own or be transported by bus to a youth connection center, of which there will be two. One here at a recreation center in Park Heights, another at a church community center. The city will supply food and games and attempt to locate their parents, but the kids can refuse to go.
At the end of the day, though, if a young person decides that they are not going to go, I want to remind members of the public and members of this committee that the curfew ordinance does not, young people are not violating criminal code, and so we are not forcing them to go anywhere.
How much is this costing?
That's a great question.
I mean, it's an exorbitant amount of money to have all of these things open and have that many people walking around.
We reached out to the mayor's office asking the total cost associated with the youth connection centers and the buses that will transport youth to them. According to the mayor's office, the summer youth engagement strategy as a whole, which also includes music and art festivals, sports and cookouts, has a budgeted price tag of $1,892, with agency employee salaries costing the most.
It's a gamble with public safety, but also with taxpayer dollars.
David Williams with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance says the city is taking a big chance.
Here's the problem, is that these centers may staff up. They may have a lot of food allocated, which is going to cost money. And if the kids don't agree to go to the centers, this is food and money that could go to waste. There is no guarantee that these services will be utilized, yet the city is going to be paying for the services.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Well, it has been a brutal year when it comes to youth violence in Baltimore. Juvenile shootings and homicides are up significantly from last year, with 40 kids getting shot and 10 losing their lives. Today, Baltimore City Schools hosted an annual Peace and Remembrance Day, honoring the students lost to violence. School CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises and City Council President Nick Mosby joined students who read poetry and called for an end to the bloodshed.
We were born to fly, born to soar, and we are a phoenix, because no matter how many times you burn us to the ground, we will always get back up, using the ashes as evidence that we are stronger than you gave us credit for.
Well, the ceremony also included a performance from city school student musicians.
I want to bring up the Washington Post op-ed from 2015, where you talk about the brain science and development of young people's brains potentially not being developed until 21, maybe even 25, and those people should have their cases adjudicated in family court.
Correct.
Do you still stand by those comments?
I do.
Fox 45 News hearing from Juvenile Services Secretary Vincent Schiraldi after he published an op-ed in the Washington Post about what may be fueling the juvenile crime crisis in Maryland. Mackenzie Frost has part 2 of her exclusive interview.
DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi is doubling down on some of those comments that were a point of contention during his confirmation process. He says it comes down to finding other ways to keeping tabs on some of these young people. And that brings us to DJS supervision, which right now doesn't seem to be working for everyone. This Washington Post op-ed, co-written by Vincent Schiraldi nearly a decade ago, brought up by some lawmakers as a concern. But the newly appointed and confirmed secretary doesn't see it as an issue. That was brought up during the confirmation hearing. Some lawmakers had concerns about that, and your views as a secretary for an agency plagued with problems. Do you see their concerns?
Many agencies are plagued with problems. It's not just DJS has problems and nobody else has problems. Everything else is perfect.
But you're the secretary of this.
When you look at, right, so you're asking me a question you want me to answer, right? So let me answer the question. If you ask most of your viewers, how different were you, particularly the men, at the age of 17 versus the age of 19? Were you dramatically more ready to engage in adult responsibility and adult behaviors when you were a freshman or a sophomore in college than you were when you were a senior in high school? I think most people would say no.
Giraldi notes his day-to-day work now is focusing on the young people 18 and under who are under his supervision at DJS. And now he says a lot of those kids end up on a GPS monitoring device. There are examples. We had a 12-year-old who was gunned down in South Baltimore not too long ago. He had a GPS ankle monitor on under the supervision of DJS. After examples of the supervision breakdown. In 2019, we had the 16-year-old who was part of the group of kids who were charged with Officer Amy Caprio's death. He too was on supervision, so that didn't work for the public safety aspect for the community. What needs to improve for the supervision, the probation, the parole within DJS to ensure that there is safety for the community and for these kids who are on it?
Yeah, so supervision all by itself, by a government-funded probation officer or community supervisor, that's just this much of the problem. We really have to engage the rest of the people in their community.
Giraldi, like some in the more progressive criminal justice reform arenas, pushing for a more community-based supervision approach.
We got to get in there with those kids and interrupt that flow and put them on a path to success. That's where we'll have our best success, not just because some PO sees you once a week in his office and has you, pee in a cup and tell you to go forth and sin no more. That's not ever going to do it.
But how to do that and how soon those ideas will become a reality remains unclear. Do you believe the safety of the community as a whole outweighs a young person's ability to stay in the community to get those rehabilitative services in some of these facilities that may or may not even be working?
I think that's an either-or question, and I reject the concept. I think that we need to do both and. We have a system, laws passed over the years by the legislatures, judges judging, prosecutors prosecuting, DJS doing our part. When the judges say to secure them, I need to secure them. When it's time for them to come back home to their communities, I need to have the kinds of programs in to make sure they don't reoffend when they come home and that they thrive and do better. And that's my job, and that's what I'm going to do.
How long do you think it'll take before that is a reality?
I think we're going to, when I leave here, whenever that is, there's still going to be stuff to fix. So it's never going to be a perfect system. But I think it's our job day to day to be improving the system and always looking at both turning young people's lives around so that they can thrive and public safety. And that's what I want to be judged on, and I'm sure I will be.
A tall task for a secretary overseeing a department with programming, staffing, and success challenges to overcome. All while many lawmakers say the success of many of their criminal justice plans hinge on the success of DJS. The governor's office tells me that top-to-bottom review of DJS that Governor Westmore ordered should be done as soon as possible. It's still unclear what will come from those findings. But in the meantime, if you want to watch my entire conversation with DJS Secretary Giraldi, all you have to do is scan the QR code at the bottom of your screen, and it'll take you right there. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
New tonight, Baltimore police are searching for this woman in connection to a deadly stabbing on Monday in Park Heights. The woman is pictured wearing that tan sweatshirt and jeans. At one point in the surveillance video, you can see the woman pull a knife from her sleeve. Police say the stabbing happened just after midnight. Anybody with information, or if you think you know this woman, call Baltimore police. And trending today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivering a surprise commencement address to graduates at Johns Hopkins University this morning. He appeared via live stream to share words of encouragement to the students. Zelensky telling students that time is the most valuable resource.
One piece of advice always works. You have to know exactly why you need today and how you want your tomorrows to look like. You have to know this when you are a politician and have to achieve a certain goal for your country. You have to know this when you are a soldier And you have to defend your position so that the whole country is protected. You have to know this when you just have to go through life.
Zelensky was also presented with an honorary Doctorate of Humane Letters degree by the university's president. Well, also trending, 15 people have been charged in 3 separate prison contraband conspiracies at Roxbury Correctional Institution in Hagerstown. Pictures here showing just some of the items found. Those allegedly involved include inmates, civilians, and 1 correctional officer who has worked there for 10 years. In one of the cases, Attorney General Anthony Brown says an inmate was able to connect with somebody who attempted to deliver drugs and phones with a drone. That person was caught. Just last month, 11 people were charged in another contraband conspiracy at the Jessup Correctional Institution. All right, a live look at the Bay Bridge where there's two-way traffic heading to the beaches. As Memorial Day weekend is almost here, it will be one of the busiest weekends of the year on Maryland's roadways. 23 specialized Maryland State Police units will be out patrolling on the lookout for impaired driving, aggressive driving, and speeding, of course. Maryland averaged about 150 deaths due to impaired driving from 2017 to 2021. The state says the majority of those deaths were preventable.
A top credit agency putting the United States on notice. I'm Atrell Nishard. Coming up, how a second downgrading in 12 years could affect everyday Americans.
And if you're going to be headed down the ocean this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, cool days, a dry day. Looks like Saturday, but some showers could come back for Sunday and Monday. Water temperature's only at 64. I'll let you know how it looks if you're staying around here. My Weather Authority forecast.
Well, a programming alert tonight streaming on FoxBaltimore.com, a special town hall, artificial intelligence, the pace of change.
When you combine artificial intelligence along with antivirus software and a system's ability to actually repair itself, things can actually get better, faster, and less expensive. At the same time, if not handled correctly, and there is an error in the code, for lack of a better term, it could actually perceive us as the virus.
The discussion from 7 to 8 tonight is on the potential benefits and pitfalls of AI. It will stream again on FOX baltimore.com. Well, Thursday marks exactly 1 week before the U.S. could default on its debt, according to an estimate from the Treasury Department. A new warning from one of the top 3 credit rating agencies means there could be economic consequences even without a default. National correspondent Audra El-Nashar explains from Capitol Hill.
The potential for a repeat of 2011's debt ceiling fallout getting more real. Fitch Ratings placing the United States' AAA credit on Rating Watch Negative, something House Republicans and the White House are reacting to.
There's no reason to default. There's no reason to lose our credit rating.
Underscores that there are real consequences to the getting up to the brink as House Republicans have pushed us.
Fitch putting debt ceiling brinkmanship at the top of its list of key rating drivers. The firm says it expects a deal will ultimately be reached before a default occurs, but they say, quote, risks have risen that the debt limit will not be raised or suspended before the X date, and consequently that the government could begin to miss payments on some of its obligations. A credit downgrade would cause damage similar to S&P's move in deal was reached at the last minute. Interest rates could rise even higher, making borrowing costs for certain mortgages or student loans more expensive. Panic on Wall Street could mean retirements and other savings take a hit. Brian Deese, who recently stepped away from his post running the White House Economic Council, says it can take years for the economy to recover.
Even if they're able to go up to or close to the X date and resolve this, doing it at the last minute has consequences.
Each side indicating they're no longer thinking about the timeline in terms of days.
Every hour matters. That's why the White House has to become very serious about this.
You've already got the threat of a downgrade, and we've already starting to see some disruptions in the Treasury market. So yes, I think every hour counts at this point.
Now, Washington does have until next week, Thursday, before the first potential default date, but the timeline gets a lot tighter when you consider it could take 2 days or so to just write the legislation. Then Speaker McCarthy's vowed to keep with his House conference rule of 72 hours of review before a vote occurs. Then it's got to pass the other chamber. It's got to pass the Senate, then head all the way down to Pennsylvania Avenue and make its way to the president's desk.
That is complicated, and Audra, perhaps complicating things even more for the speaker. A group of Republicans today urged him to hold the line on their spending cut demands. Fill us in on what this means exactly.
Right. So 35 members of the House Freedom Caucus, the most conservative members of the Republican conference, wrote to Speaker McCarthy today, basically with a list of demands now at the 11th hour. And among those demands are canceling funding for a new FBI headquarters. They want to add border policies onto this Limit, Save, Grow Act that they passed a few weeks ago. And look, the speaker does not necessarily need all 35 of their votes. If any bipartisan deal with the president brings some Democrats on board, he could still pass it through. But politically, if he loses support from too many of those House Freedom Caucus members, his speakership could be in peril. Because remember, some of the conditions that came with him getting the gavel was it does not take very many people to challenge his position as speaker. So this could be really, in a lot of ways, the first big test to see if he can keep that title.
That's right. They changed the rules. All right. Very interesting. We'll be watching. Audra El-Nashar reporting live for us from D.C. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, the Fox Triple Cast this evening, taking a beautiful look at the water. Mile 1 Taos Cam replaced by the Ocean City Cam. How beautiful is that? Look at the waves coming in. It's cool out there, though. Temperatures last hour, 59 degrees at Ocean City because of those cool Atlantic Ocean waters. Here in Baltimore, gorgeous day in our harbor, lots of sun. And on the HD radar, well, that's our latest weather maker impacting us right now. It's fair weather high pressure, and that's going to stay all the way through the first portion of the weekend. So sure bet going to have easy travels getting out of town. Now, by Sunday, Monday, things may change a little bit, unfortunately, and we'll get into that in a second. But 71 now, clear skies, very busy 695. Looking a little better than last hour, though. Winds variable at 6 miles an hour. Nice and dry, but cooler than yesterday. Temperatures in the low and mid 70s this afternoon, even some mid and upper 60s. Right now, we're 11 degrees colder than 24 hours ago here in Baltimore. 13 degrees down at Westminster, where it's 70, 71 in Baltimore this afternoon. Right now, under the sun, we did have temperatures at 74 for a high earlier, a couple hours ago. So not a bad recovery, but still significantly cooler than we were for the day on Wednesday. And a cold front came through. It's pretty much totally diminished at this point down to our south, and it's lent moisture to this big weather maker here. Lots of rain and thunderstorms, Tampa, all the way up to the Carolina coast. The cooler, sunny weather stays with us today. The system down to our south, that potentially could be our next weather maker. That's going to meander down to our south for tomorrow with potential wet weather there. If you have any trips planned to the Carolina beaches, pretty big slam dunk there that it looks like it's going to be some wet weather. But the case is, or the question is, how far north is that rain going to get? And eventually, how much would it linger if it does? So those are the questions in play for Sunday, Monday of our forecast. But for tonight into early tomorrow morning, look at that chill back down into the mid to upper 40s. And by tomorrow afternoon, good looking day with sunshine, highs in the low to mid 70s. Great for the getaway. I'm going to let you know how things pan out all the way through the exclusive 10-day forecast and when we could make our first run at 90.
Police in West Virginia confiscating 2 truckloads of missing shoes from a shop that closed down in March. Now they're trying to find the shoes' rightful owners. Shayla Klein from our Sinclair sister station in Charleston has the steps police are taking.
I did not realize the volume of shoes he had there.
South Charleston Police Chief Brad Reinhardt feeling like he bit off a little more than he could chew when the police department collected at least 1,000 pairs of shoes from Taylor Brothers Shoes.
We returned one to a lady. It was 2001.
The shoe repair shop had been in business since